A controversial Volkswagen accessory on many ruined VWs is added to Wilson. Do you hate it? Do you love it? Do you have any idea what I'm talking about? Let's hash it out on this episode of Wilson, the VW Bus. Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Joe, and today we're going to tackle one of the VW accessories that I had not realized was such a controversial breaking point with the purists and customizers, and that is the VW bumper rope. Now, before we begin, let me fill you in on the backstory for this episode. It was the spring of 2024, and my family and I are enjoying the annual town-wide garage sales that are popping up in the neighboring towns around where we live. It's become a popular springtime event where everyone in the town has one dedicated weekend to bring out all the things they no longer want in their front yard and driveway and to sell their antiques or used items or even their junk. We have more than 10 towns in our area that participate in this annually, and I particularly look forward to finding things that you can no longer purchase in the store. There are just some things that you can only get secondhand in this day and age, and things like a tiki mask from the 50s or some kind of weird, eclectic thing that, might go good in Wilson. So we started this year's event in the neighboring town of Metuchen, where I was lucky enough to find a guy who in the previous years was selling die-cast toy cars. I think he must own a toy store or something like that, but he takes the opportunity in this annual garage or yard sale to clear out his old inventory. A few years back, he sold me a couple of VW bus toys, and he had boxes and boxes of brand new, tiny little VW buses, which I wanted to get, but for whatever reason, for some reason, I didn't purchase. So I've been trying to get back and find out where this guy lives, but you think I would have remembered his address or written it down, right? Wrong. So this year I set out to try to find him again, and only using my vague recollection of which side of the street he might have lived on. Honestly, my wife had a better idea, and she eventually led us down the street after about an hour and a half of wasted time. And I bought every one of the 1967 VW buses that he had, all the 1/32nd scale models in a variety of colors and designs. I even got a 67 Bug and a double cab model too. So I have a shelf right here in my office that's filled up with nice toy VW buses, and my granddaughter is very happy to play with them. So anyway, the next weekend we hit another town for their garage sales, and I found nothing for me or for Wilson. So the week after, I'm in the town-wide garage sale for my hometown, and I found an owner who was selling everything from an estate sale he had for his late mother. So while in the basement, I came across a large wooden moving box with the words "Established 1883, Weissberger, 224 East 22nd Street, New York City." Now, this stamping was on both sides of this big wooden crate. It was a moving and storage company in New York City, which started back in, I think, 1915 and grew to the largest moving and storage company in New York City by the 1960s. It had a great look, great patina, and it was perfect for Wilson's roof rack. When I asked if it was for sale, the owner thought for a second or two, and then he said $10. And before I could say okay, he was like, "Oh, $5." And then I just stood there for a second, thinking he might pay me to take it home. But I would have happily paid $20 for the thing. It's really cool, and it's going to go on top of the roof rack, of course. Now, down the street from where my newly purchased crate came from, we came to another home with a bunch of garden supplies and tools, and nothing really exciting. But there I see it, some rope, some hemp rope. Some old, garden rope. And immediately I remember the postings on the ruined VW, the Purists Not Allowed, which is that group on Facebook, and some postings from the Samba, that people absolutely hated when VWers go put rope on their vehicles. And I thought the arguments about lowering VWs were a heated argument, but the rope bumper seems to me just to be as much a subject of contention. So this particular piece of rope I was holding in my hand was a staggering $2 piece, but it was way too thin to use on the bumper. I instead planned on using that on the roof rack because it was the perfect size just to hold down some things on the top. I brought it home, and that evening I wrapped it around the top right-hand side of the roof rack, all while getting little splinters in my hands as I was doing this. And all I could think of is, where am I going to find a nice, large piece of rope, vintage rope, for my front bumper? Yeah, I was going to do it. I went online and I couldn't help myself. I liked it. I thought it looked neat. So I checked a few marine supply stores, but they had the rope in the right size, but I don't want a brand new piece of shiny white rope. I mean, that's not going to work. So I wound up, no pun intended, on Facebook Marketplace, and I connected with a nice older gentleman, I believe he was from Egypt, who had a perfect piece of used rope for Wilson. It was just the right diameter with the vintage patina and look I was looking for, all for the whopping price of $10. That was it. So that evening, after I picked it up, I started wrapping that piece of rope around the right corner of the front bumper, under the towel rack, and wrapped it up to about the center of the bumper. It's plenty long, but, it's just for show. I posted a few photos online to see what kind of reaction I was going to, get from, that Facebook group, the vintage VW groups and the ruined VW group. And immediately the comments were hilarious. They're like, oh, you're going to rust out the bumper. Are you able to tow with it? Is it connected to a winch? And the conversations went on for days with all the purists and the customizers, each trying to persuade everyone on the internet to side with them. But in the end, I think the majority of us agree that, like a tattoo, a VW bumper rope is just a stylistic representation of the bus owner, and it really doesn't need to serve a specific purpose or a function. If you don't like a bumper rope on your VW, you don't need to have it. You can tell people that's, it's just your personality. And I've received a bunch of positive comments at the cruise nights and car shows that I've attended so far this year, and they like the bumper rope, and I like the bumper rope. So, my bumper is by no means a pristine piece of metal. It's got tons of little nicks and discolorations, and it's pretty crusty. It goes great with Wilson. So I also... on the roof with the Weissberger box and my other crate that I have, I recently added my mother's 50-plus-year-old acoustic guitar case to that roof rack, but not the guitar, just the case. The guitar is a 1961 Epiphone Caballero FT30, but it's been adopted by my son and lives at his house now. But the case really fit the look of the bus, and I figured it could be good for storage for other stuff, when I go camping. Unfortunately, it's being held together by more duct tape than anything else. Actually, on my last highway trip with the bus, I noticed that the case body was sort of folding in on itself, and nobody was following me too closely. I was pretty sure why. It looks like the wind pretty much shredded the top and the sides of that old guitar case, and it was just about to be ripped right off the roof rack. So, I tried to put it back together and save it, but it was just too far gone, and I decided that it's probably best to just retire that old guitar case. I'll keep my eye out, maybe if I see one in the future, I'll get another one, but, after all, sometimes the pursuit of the item is just as much fun as having it, right? So the final thing I want to talk about on this episode is a piece that I acquired at the Dubs and the Shrubs show from 2023. You may remember me briefly talking about this. I was reacquainted with a nice young man whom I had sold a few interior parts to, and he was a vendor at the Dubs show who sold me this VW engine case for a whopping $20. I decoded it, and it looks to be a 1968, a 1500 case, I believe. Just the short block, no jugs, heads, or internals. It's just the empty case. And I've had it sitting around the garage for about a year now as a sort of an art piece I've been kicking around. I thought that maybe I should probably do something with it. I spent $20 and it's just sitting here. I came across a contact that I had made, a nice young guy named James from a company called Motoblast. And I asked him to take a look at the case and to give me an estimate. I sent him a few photos that I had of it. And he thought that it looked like a good candidate for some vapor blasting, and we agreed on a price of $175 to do both the interior and the exterior of the engine case. Vapor blasting is a similar process as soda blasting or sandblasting with a different outcome, because vapor blasting uses a specific microscopic media that's mixed with the right amount of water and air pressure. And this combination will micro-polish the surface, and it's especially good for soft metals such as brass and aluminum. It will follow the contours of the surface without causing additional pitting or dulling. After vapor blasting a cast aluminum surface, you can expect for the finish to be a little bit brighter and to last a lot longer than a newly cast part that has a much smoother, less porous finish. The action of the hammering of the surface actually kind of peens the surface. So it kind of peens the pores closed. And it gives you a kind of like a stain-resistant, harder than new kind of look. So after about 3 days, I dropped off the case to James, who sent me a photo of my engine and said, "You're all done now." All I could say was, wow. I mean, he did such a phenomenal job that, in the end, I've got the case now living in my office right next to my Gilbarco gas pump. So I put a little battery-powered motion detection light inside it. So when you walk by the case, the interior of the engine block lights up, kind of like a little nightlight. James thought that everything looked good with the engine. I mean, good enough for a rebuild. But I don't think I'm ready to build my first VW engine from scratch yet. Maybe someday. But if you want an estimate on his professional work, check out the website at www.njvaporblast.com. No endorsement. That about does it for this episode of Wilson the VW Bus. But next time, I'll tell you all about the lovely time that Zach and I had banging out that massive dent in Wilson's rear corner and what happened to cause me to have to do some paint correction and polishing on Wilson's patinaed paint surface.